Today on Week in Review, Clael Maslin called out the BC government over their Safe Supply program, the federal government and Haida Nation recently signed a historic deal together, and the All-Native basketball tournament recently concluded. Hello, I'm Cael Maslin, and thank you for joining us here on Week in Review, where we cover all of the news here in the Northwest from this past week. Our first story is about Skeena MLA Cael Maslin, who is once again calling out the provincial government on the ineffectiveness of the BC Safe Supply program. But this time, the story comes in wake of the leaked documents from the Health Ministry. Here's more from Cael Maslin of CFTK-TV.
Documents leaked last week from the Ministry of Health, but confirmed to be real by Health Minister Josie Osborne, detail that a significant portion of the opioids being freely prescribed by doctors and pharmacists are not being consumed by their intended recipients. Critic for mental health and addictions and Skeena MLA Cael Maslin says this is a problem.
The government doesn't seem to be willing to take responsibility for the fact that a lot of the safe supply has been diverted to criminals. It's been diverted to children. There's been a lot of issues around that, and the government has not really owned up for it, I should say, rather. And so I'm looking forward to when we're actually sitting to be able to try and hold them to account on that and get some answers.
Maslin is also calling for a change in the way overdose deaths are being recorded.
The BC coroner's report had come out recently, and it showed that there was a bit of a decline in overdose deaths, which I was really happy to see. I assumed that it had something to do with the timing of how they tried that failed policy of decriminalization and then kind of walked it back. So I assumed that had something to do with it. And upon digging a little bit deeper, I found out that they have recategorized fatalities that are due to safe supply. So those aren't categorized as an unregulated drug death anymore. They're calculated as a prescription drug death, and that is not something that is publicly available information. So I'm trying to dig into that right now to figure out why those statistics were skewed in that way, just to see if that does have any bearing on the overall numbers.
CFTK-TV did reach out to MLA Amna Shah, Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Addictions, for comment, but did not hear back before deadline.
In my opinion, if somebody's overdosing on safe supply or street supply, it shouldn't really matter. At the end of the day, drugs are drugs. I don't like the term toxic drug supply because all drugs are toxic. And so I don't think that there should be distinction between the two. I think regardless, that is an overdose death. So I would like to see that get investigated properly and make sure that those statistics are being reported accurately.
For CFTK TV News in Terrace, I'm Cael Maslin.
At the end of last week, an annual event was held as a way to tribute the many lives that have been lost in BC in a manner that has been all too common for many families. This past Friday saw the Tears to Hope Society hold their annual memorial march in order to make sure the stories of the many missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, LGBTQ+, and Two-Spirit people in BC are not forgotten. The march took place in Terrace in the late morning/early afternoon and saw the over 50 or so participants make their way from the local RCMP building to the Terrace Sportsplex, where a post-walk meal was available for everyone as well. Terrace Mayor Sean Buitosh attended, as did Skeena Bulkley Valley MP Taylor Backrack, who later spoke on what he thinks should be focused on in order to help prevent these cases from happening and to ensure that they don't end in complete tragedy if they do.
There's two things I'd highlight. One of them that's been brought up a lot is transportation, and there have been improvements made in our region, but the bus system and the train system that we have still isn't adequate for a lot of people, so there are improvements needed there. The second thing is something we're pushing for called the Red Dress Alert, and this would use the cell phone network to put out an alert anytime someone's loved one goes missing.
Backrack also played up the importance of an event like this, since this kind of tragedy has affected far too many families in the region, and in a later post on their Facebook page, the society seemed incredibly grateful to everyone who came to the event and assisted in keeping the memory of everyone who did not get home safely alive. For CFTK TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. Continuing with the subject of the memorial walk, after the walk was fully completed, some of the members of the group stopped by the studio here to talk about the event and the cause. Once again, here's Cael Maslin.
The Women's Memorial March took place Friday to honor the lives of missing and murdered women, girls, men, and boys across Canada.
It's very powerful to see things like that. I have dual emotions going on because I'm very honored to be a part of it, but I'm also very, the subject and why we're there is really tough. Like, it's really, really tough. I myself don't have children, but I couldn't imagine ever having to go through not knowing where your son or daughter is, or your sister.
Lorna Brown and her family began raising awareness for the cause when her niece, Tamara Chipman, went missing from Prince Rupert in September 2005.
Yeah, I felt like it was a really great turnout. We had Aboriginal Front Door came in from Vancouver to support the Highway of Tears. They know that we're often forgotten about on the Highway of Tears here.
Along with founding Tears to Hope, Brown and her family have organized many awareness walks, as well as the annual Tears to Hope relay. She says the best way to learn from others is to hear their stories directly.
Some of the students that came out didn't even know that their own grandmother, was murdered, before they were even born. And to see those youth out there, sharing those stories of their grandmother that they didn't even get to meet, and now they're out there raising that awareness, it was pretty powerful.
Despite Brown's extensive work in raising awareness over almost 20 years, her niece Tamara has yet to be found.
It's hard, right? Because you know why people are doing it, and all these people here, it's their families, and we all have some family that's either been murdered or missing, but to hear the drums, how the meaning of the drum is like the heartbeat, and I guess I just felt between the drumming and seeing the families and knowing that they're doing a special presentation for Lorna's brother, and I just I find it overwhelming in many ways but at the same time feel honored to be part of it.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
The federal government and the Haida Nation recently signed a historic agreement that recognizes Aboriginal title over in Haida Gwaii. The Big Tide Haida Title Lands Agreement affirms that the Haida now have title over the island's lands, beds of fresh water bodies, and foreshores to the low tide mark. Council of the Haida Nation President Jason Alsop said the deal represents a move from an era of denial, occupation, and resistance to a new one of peaceful coexistence and recognition. The agreement comes more than 2 decades after the Council of the Haida Nation launched a legal challenge against Canada and the province, seeking a declaration of Aboriginal title. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was also there to sign the deal, with this being one of his final appearances as Canada's leader.
It marks the beginning of a new chapter in the relationship between the Haida Nation and the Government of Canada. A new chapter that commits the government to partner as true equals with the Haida Nation. A new chapter that enshrines the right of the Haida to control their own destiny.
Up next, a major court case taking place in Smithers saw a ruling delivered. Welcome back. We switch to Smithers now, and what was reportedly a packed courtroom as a ruling was delivered in the contentious case of Wet'suwet'en land defenders claiming excessive police force and racism. Here is CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews once again.
A BC Supreme Court judge has found members of the RCMP made grossly offensive, racist, and dehumanizing remarks about Indigenous women who were arrested in a 2021 blockade of Coastal GasLink pipeline construction. Justice Michael Tammon said in a ruling delivered in Smithers on Tuesday that his findings of state misconduct don't warrant a stay of proceedings against 2 women, but they and another protester will get a reduction in their sentences for criminal contempt as an appropriate remedy. Chief Slato Molly Wickham, Shaylin Sampson, and Corey Jocko were convicted of criminal contempt for breaking the injunction in January 2024, but they applied to have the case stayed, alleging systemic misconduct by the police during the injunction enforcement. Tammins said Wickham and journalist Amber Bracken had recording devices on them that were seized by police during their arrests, but the devices kept recording after being placed in police vehicles. The devices captured conversations between police officers that referred to Wickham and Sampson in highly offensive and clearly racist terms, Tammins said. He said the audio recordings captured police laughing and comparing the women protesters, who had red handprints on their faces, to orcs from Lord of the Rings. He said the racist comments breached the charter rights of Wickham and Sampson. Wickham said the case was a showdown between Wet'suwet'en law and colonial law and hopes Tammins' decision will assist other land defenders in the future. Tammins did reject claims that police used excessive force or implied unnecessary resources to dismantle the blockade. Criminal contempt carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, for which the accused can now expect a reduction. The case will be back in court on April 3rd to fix a date for sentencing. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Looking back to Terrace, after Skeena MLA Claire Rattay was elected this past October, she said that one of her first moves on the job was to fix the local bus stop at the new Cassian Regional Hospital. Jaylene Matthews of CFTK-TV has the details.
The bus wasn't stopping at the hospital. That's what MLA Claire Rattay said was causing issues for people trying to access care.
They hadn't moved the bus stop. So I had a number of elderly people, many of which had severe difficulties walking, that were actually going out to Terrace from Kitimat about 3-4 times a week for dialysis treatments. And they were taking the public bus, and they had to walk 4 blocks in the ice and snow to be able to access the hospital, and that was just completely unacceptable. So we worked with BC Transit, and they were awesome to work with. They have moved the bus stop, they've changed the bus routes, they've made sure that people have been accommodated.
Rattay says that although this hurdle's been overcome, there's actually a greater issue at play.
I'm trying to look into a alternative option right now for people that have to travel from Kitimat to the Terrace Hospital, and I'd like to also approach it looking at the Nass area as well and seeing if there's a way to create some kind of a dedicated bus system for people that need to go for dialysis and oncology treatments, particularly because they tend to be frequently, you've got to go a few times a week. Obviously the costs associated with that can be quite overwhelming if you're having to drive, and taking public transit when you're feeling unwell is really just not ideal. I wouldn't want that for anybody in my family. So I'd like to see something that's more of a dedicated bus service that would be focused on those people. So that's kind of one thing that I'm working on, and it was a good feeling to finally get something. Feel like I really got something accomplished that was making a difference, even if it is just getting a bus stop changed. That was kind of my first real feeling like I was able to make a difference. So it was a good feeling.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
The yearly all-native basketball tournament that is held at Prince Rupert's Jim Sakoti Civic Center recently came to a conclusion at the end of last week. And as far as who the winners in each division were, the senior men's division saw Burnaby blow out Skidegate in those finals. Similkameen dominated Vancouver to complete a three-peat in the women's division. Metlakatla got by Bella Bella in a tight game for a repeat in the intermediate division. Prince Rupert beat Heidelberg in the men's masters bracket, and Cane Island defeated Hazelton to win the women's masters division. But anyone with an appetite for more BC tournament basketball won't have to wait long, as the junior all-native tournament will be held next month from March 16th to 21st. Plans for a 200,000 BPD bitumen to fuels refinery located between Terrace and Kitimat have been scrapped. The proposed facility would have used hydrocracking to process heavy oil and would have been powered by a 200-megawatt gas-powered power plant. The facility was proposed to refine cost-advantaged feedstock into Euro V standard fuels and would use carbon captures to store to minimize CO2 emission. The Pacific Futures Energy Corporation had applied for environmental permitting, and the environmental impact assessment was underway. The Minister of Environment and Change has now terminated the environmental assessment for the Pacific Future Energy Refinery project. The government stated that on December 3, 2024, the Pacific Future Energy Corporation notified the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada that they no longer intended to carry out the project. After the break, Prince Rupert is attempting to win a prestigious hockey-based honor. Welcome back. Up next is a report that looks at what's currently going on with a northern BC city's notorious water-based infrastructure problems. It's no secret that the city of Prince Rupert has had more than its fair share of issues when it comes to their water and sewage system as of late, with the issues in question even leading to the city instituting a boil water notice that has been in place since late November of last year. The last posted update on the notice from the city came out back on January 14th, where it was said that the notice was being extended for another 4 to 6 weeks due to a new water supply main that was being installed, resulting in some water sitting for too long in an isolated section of pipe. While a recent interview with Prince Rupert Mayor Herb Pond did give some insight into what's going on at the moment, his statement was not quite as conclusive as some may have hoped it was.
We are going to learn very soon when this particular round will be off. They originally talked about somewhere in the end of February. We don't have an update at this time, but unfortunately, that any time we spend off the boil water advisory will probably be fairly short-lived. Just the nature of what happens when you just start serving old pipes.
Pond did also acknowledge that he understands the challenges that local families, seniors, and businesses like hotels are facing due to the advisory, but he also said that going on and off of water advisories will likely be constant while infrastructure repairs are happening, and that the city's main challenge is trying to ensure the advisories don't last super long. Boil water advisories mean that people must boil their water for at least a minute and then place it in a storage container before doing things like cooking and brushing their teeth. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. And now we look to Prince Rupert again as they attempt to gain a hockey-related honor that Terrace has managed to win in the not-too-distant past. Back at the end of January, the city of Prince Rupert announced that they will be throwing their hat into the ring in the race to win the Kraft Hockeyville nomination for the year of 2025. The winner of the competition is set to get a $250,000 grand prize, alongside being named Hockeyville for the year. In an attempt to establish themselves in the race, the city's recreation department is calling on residents to share their positive stories, notes, and photos of the community on the Kraft Hockeyville's website's Prince Rupert page. And the Prince Rupert Mayor Herb Pond has also outlined his reasoning for why his city should get the nod.
I think more now than ever is in an interesting place in the country's history. When you look at the threats that are happening to the south of us, when you look at the demand from national politicians and provincial politicians to diversify our economy, where are we going to move new goods to? It's got to be out of one of several ports, out to the world. And Rupert is Canada's third largest, fast growing. It's got such potential and opportunity. And that combined with the fact that we're about 50% Indigenous, and of course the natural beauty of the area that surrounds us, all good reasons why Prince Rupert should be the feature community.
An additional bonus feature of winning the bid will see the selected community host an NHL game, and Prince Rupert has promised to use the prize money to address their arena pad. March 2nd is the cutoff date for people to advocate on the Hockeyville website for their community, with 4 finalists being announced on March 15th, and a nationwide vote will determine the winner on April 4th. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. The BC Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals recently responded to a heartbreaking case of animal neglect outside of Terrace after the owner reached out asking for help. Yet again, CFTK's Jaylene Matthews has more of the information.
25 cats and a severely matted Labrador Retriever Poodle mix. That's how many animals were confiscated from a home east of Terrace. Eileen Drever, Senior Officer Protection for the BCSPCA, said the odor of feces and ammonia was overwhelming and that the home was not suitable for animals or people. The dog was heavily matted to the point of not being able to see or properly close his mouth, and many of the cats were underweight, one injured. Drever says the dog was distressed when he arrived at the animal center, but was immediately sedated and sent to the vet for an emergency groom. The mats caused hot spots and resulted in infection, and his toes were becoming deviated due to overgrown nails. The dog was also suffering from an ear infection and dental issues. Drever says staff noticed he went from not wanting to be touched to wanting to be wrapped in a blanket and held. Drever says 25 cats need to be spayed and neutered, along with many requiring other treatments as well. Drever says she's thankful the owner asked for help and recognized he could not give the animals what they needed. All of the animals are currently in quarantine with an unknown adoption timeline. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
The Houston District Chamber of Commerce recently announced that they have come to terms on a brand new partnership. The chamber is teaming up with Our Covered Inc., Canada's largest privately owned HR provider, in order to give their members exclusive access to essential human resources tools and services while also getting special pricing. It was also disclosed that the chamber will gain what was called complimentary access to over 1,000 HR documents that were tailored to all of Canada's jurisdictions. Our Covered's main goal as a company is to help others simplify their HR management, in addition to providing support that is cost-effective as well. Still to come, the City of Terrace recently posted a major province-based reminder. Welcome back. The City of Terrace posted a reminder on their Facebook page that is quite important for everyone that is currently in arrangements involving short-term rentals. Terrace's reminder said that the provincial government is now requiring everyone who is a host of a short-term rental, a platform, or a strata hotel platform to register in their short-term rental registry. And as part of joining the registry, all hosts will be required to pay annual registration fees as well. The deadline to register is listed as May 1st, and as an incentive to get signed up a bit quicker, early registrants will have discounts made available to them. The death of a man in Vanderhoof that happened back in January is now being considered a homicide, as Mounties are asking for help in identifying a person who might be able to help the investigation. RCMP officers said that they responded to a residence on January 14th after receiving a call for a well-being check, and a 65-year-old man named Gordon Sims was found dead. Police say that they are now looking to speak to a person who was seen in the surveillance images on screen, who the police think has some information that is related to the case. Those who know where the person might be located or any other information that can lead to the case being solved are asked to call the Vanderhoof RCMP at 250-567-2222. The Dawson Creek RCMP are seeking out the identity of a man who is believed to have stolen about $200 worth of items from a local Walmart and had a surveillance picture of him taken while he was allegedly in the act. The theft was reported to the police back on February 2nd at about 8 p.m., with the Walmart that was stolen from being located on the 600 block of Highway 2. The shoplifter's description is that of a man that is somewhere between 40 to 50 years old, measuring at about 5'7", and he was wearing a blue jacket at the time. Anyone who has useful information that could lead to this discovery of the man's whereabouts can call the Dawson Creek RCMP at 250-784-3700. That wraps up this week's edition of Week in Review. Make sure to tune into our regular newscasts on Monday at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have a good weekend.